Okay, let's call the City of Milton Common Council meeting to order for Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. It is 7 o'clock. And can I get appropriate confirmation of appropriate meeting notice?
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We have an agenda, and can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, everyone. Number 4, public comments. Do we have anybody signed up?
Probably folks for the public hearing.
Right, we have somebody signed in for the public hearing. And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Item number 6, our presentation 2017 year in review.
So this is something that I started last year, and it people seem to appreciate it, both on the council and in the public and our friends at the newspapers. So it's something I want to continue to do every year, and maybe this will be part of one of Dave's goals to make the council meetings the place to be in Milton on Tuesday night, since we broadcast this on Facebook and we've got 3 people not associated with the city or the media in the audience. So you get a great seat for this. So I wanted to start off the presentation kind of with, something, a piece of big news, piece of overarching news from 2017. And that piece of news that I think was probably one of the bigger pieces of news in 2017 was that the city saw over $27 million worth of new equalized growth in the city of Milton. That's a substantially high number, and that number is important on a variety of levels. It helps, kind of maintain the tax rate or mitigate any tax increases, increases the city's overall value, so that goes into account when constructing levy limits and things of that nature. But also, it's a sign of positive economic activity, both in terms of employment, but also investment and spending. So that $27 million is a very, very large number, one of the largest numbers Milton's seen probably in at least the last decade, if not longer. So that was kind of the piece that I wanted to start with. Want to talk about accomplishments from each department. Police, library, public works, city hall, and some various other accomplishments that occurred in 2017. And, although it's probably difficult to read on the screen, definitely included it in the packet, and certainly Chief or Howie or Dan or Inga jump in at any time if we talk about something that you think needs a little bit more explanation. But starting off with the police department, achieved the first Y-League reaccreditation, and this is valid through 2020. If you remember back in 2014, or 2015 with the 14, the City of Milton Police Department was one of the Y-League accredited departments in the state. So that was a big, that was obviously a big goal of that year, and then now to go through the recertification, I think Chief would say is equally as taxing as far as time and commitment and paper and resources and things of that. So to pass through that with flying colors and achieve that reaccreditation is equally as a large task as just the original accreditation to begin with. So conducted 3 hiring processes, which resulted in 2 new officers, selected a new school resource officer, implemented naloxone naloxone,
Narcan.
Narcan training, followed up, assisted in or initiated or followed up in over 1,173 code violations. So that's not unique. That doesn't mean there was 1,173 code violations, but that's the number of actions that were taken either in part by the police department or led by the police department in conjunction with Public Works. 1,173. That's a lot. And, several of those are follow-ups, but I think Howie and I looked at the initial, just the original or unique number, and that was associated with close to 500 unique code enforcement actions. So that's a big investment in time and resources to do that, both between Public Works and the police department. Had a major homicide investigation, obviously, in October, if folks recall. Obtained a CVS grant for the new drug drop box. Purchased and deployed new traffic counting device, which we utilized for part of our discussion this evening, later on in the agenda. And numerous public engagement opportunities. And I know the chief is proud of these opportunities and wants to see those continue and expand in future years. Chief, anything to add to any of those? Okay. Milton Library, unfortunately, Lisa is out ill today, but she certainly had a lot of great accomplishments in 2017. And overall, what the library experienced in 2017 was really a phenomenal year, both in terms of accomplishments for the library and the library staff and the facilities, but also in being able to share those accomplishments with the community. Lisa provided me with a lot of statistics in regards to participation and attendance. And you can see there was over a 40% increase in attendance between March and December of 2017 compared to 2015. 2016 doesn't really count because the library was in transition. 40%, that's an incredibly large number. That's over 21,000 more visitors than they had the previous full year. That's awesome. Offered 22% more programs, saw a 77% increase in those programs, and yet they continue to do fundraising activities, add more programs, had over 200 donor names, walls and donor plaques designed and added to the walls, and already started on one of their next big projects in the Story Gardens project, which will be really kind of continuing on this year and really gaining some steam. Staff was awarded a $15,000 LSTA grant. I'm sorry, I don't really know what that means, but hey, it's a grant. Introduced 2 new long-term series in the Spark program and the Tweens Who Code, so that's part of that new use of the library facility. It's not just about books anymore. Organized the Teen Literacy Club fundraiser. Young author librarian led the 3rd annual Teen Battle of the Books, which was a Rock County-wide teen competition. 5th annual Little Owl and Wise Owl Teen and Children's Program. Had over 100 registrants, and I know those toddler programs are super popular and they fill up super fast. As somebody who has attempted to get in them and have not been successful, I know how popular they are. Staff made over 200 visits. I don't want to go to the program, the toddler program. They have invited me to several Lego programs, though, but I appreciate that. Collaborated with the Hedberg Public Library. Staff made over 200 visits to schools, music and movement program, successful toddler art program. So as you can see, not only has the library gone through a major renaissance in their facility, but they continue to grow and expand their offerings to the community well beyond that of what people probably remember as a library of days gone by. That is, I've said it many times, the library is one of the crown jewels of Milton, and they continue to shine that jewel more and more brilliantly every year. It's impressive. Public Works, equally as impressive, but probably doesn't get the recognition that the library does. They completed several projects this year, including the reconstruction of the South Merchant Row parking lot, which was a very visible parking lot, or very visible project. They added over 20 new stalls, widened it, and really just made that whole area look and feel new again. And which has prompted reinvestment from the private entities in that area as well, which is great to see. We partnered with the Milton House on the reconstruction of their parking lot, also repaved portions of Arthur Drive, Columbus Street, Bowers Lake Road, in which wheel tax dollars were utilized, completed the first round of the EAB hazardous tree mitigation program, in which unfortunately 120 trees had to be removed from the city. Many of those are starting to be replanted, and hopefully we'll continue to see that in 2018. But nonetheless, that was a labor-intensive effort undertaken by Public Works staff. Again, assisted in over 1,100 code enforcement contacts, completed 13 snow events, and again, this is just in 2017, so what they just had to go through over the last couple of days is not included in those numbers. That'll be next year this time. We'll get to talk about it and look back fondly on that. Remodeled the South Goodrich Park restrooms for both accessibility and user comfort. And Inga can probably touch on this a little bit more too. We're undergoing an assessment of all of our park facilities in order to ensure that they are ADA compliant. Our friends to the south, unfortunately, went through some legal troubles with that very issue, and we want to make sure that we get out ahead of that. Completed the South Water Pressure Zone project, rehabilitated well 2, and conducted and implemented the new refuse and recycling contract. Seems like that was certainly more than a year ago, but yes, that happened in 2017. And assisted in countless community events, and this is one thing that I think certainly probably isn't recognized enough in the community, is how much work Public Works does for community events. They are the guys who are standing out there along with police officers, standing out there on the hot pavement in the middle of the 4th of July, redirecting traffic, generally getting yelled at, generally dealing with some unruly people. But that's the Public Works staff that's out there doing that. That is something that's completely unheralded, believe me. And we always have debriefings afterwards, and they get to share some colorful new words that they learned during that experience. And that's just for the 4th of July. There's also Chicken Barbecue and Wally's Fest and Civil War Days. Those guys are involved in all of those projects, and there's, that's part of their job. There's no cost recovery agreement with the chamber. There's no cost recovery agreement, with FFA. So those are the kinds of in-kind contributions. Those events could not happen without Public Works involvement in it, and they do it basically through their regular budget. So that's important to continue to remember that as we go through. And I point that out because I've often heard, well, what does the city do to support events? The city makes sure events happen. Without the city, these events couldn't happen. So that's how we support the events. Without the city, there is no 4th of July parade. Without the city, Chicken Barbecue becomes very difficult. Without the city, Wally's Fest doesn't happen. So it's not just about dollars in a budget. It's not just about $5,000 here or $10,000 here or $5,798 or whatever it ends up being. There is a lot more that the city does than just one line item on a budget, and I think people forget that very, very often. So I want to take these kinds of opportunities to remind folks of that. As part of those Public Works accomplishments, took some pictures here just to kind of, everybody likes pictures. Pictures speak 1,000 words, and when they're pictures of Howie, they speak several thousand words. So there's a picture of Howie measuring some noxious weeds that were over 12 inches that needed to be mowed. You can see on the picture on the far right there, that's some debris and refuse at a home that needed to be cleaned up. Again, not glamorous work, but things that people don't think about at all when they say, what does Public Works do again? All they do is just plow snow? No, these are the kinds of things that they are involved in every single day. Here's some repaving projects, pictures of some repaving projects. The one on the left is Bowers Lake. The one on the right is Arthur Drive. 2 more repaving projects here. The one on the left is Merchant Row. The one on the right, I believe, is Columbus. Oh, yep, there you go. Merchant Row, Columbus. Here's a couple pictures of things that, again, probably... these guys, they do these things, and sometimes I don't even know about them. Howie sent me some pictures of some accomplishments in 2017, and he sent me this picture on the left, and I said, what is that? And that's the guys from Public Works unloading how many thousands of boxes of Girl Scout cookies? Thousands and thousands of boxes, and they're stored in our Public Works garage, and the guys unload them, and then the Girl Scouts come to Public Works and pick them up. So without the Public Works employees' help and the use of our garage, they'd have to rent a facility, they'd have to find a facility big enough to store those, probably get volunteers or pay people to move them around. So those are the kinds of things that just happen, and they're more than willing to do it, and I think it's great. Center picture is of the Gaga Ball pit. Girl Scouts built a Gaga Ball pit at the middle of Cross Ridge Park. I don't know what Gaga Ball is, but I know who Lady Gaga is, but I don't think they're associated at all. And then the picture on the right is the splash pad, an area that we maintain and keep an eye on and make sure is operating well. Inga supervises the employees that work down there. And if you recognize that little girl in that picture, that's Howie's granddaughter. So that's how committed he is to the community. He sends his kids to the splash pad almost every day in the summer.
And he nibbles on Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
Good
call. Good call. Howie, anything to add on Public Works? Anything that I didn't? All right.
I have an addition to that.
Oh, sure.
It was our Public Works Department that has helped us out with our Mary Milton tree lighting.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
And
that's another
that's
good.
been going on for several years, and a big thank you for that also.
Yeah. I put these as City Hall accomplishments, but these are really somewhat more, a lot of these are organizational-wide accomplishments, but they may not be associated specifically with one department. Assisted with the Milton Fire Department transition budget and shared services agreement. That's something that Dan has worked on tirelessly for the 4 years that I've been here, the 3 years that the two of us have been here, and that will continue in 2018 and beyond. We reorganized the duties of City Hall and actually eliminated an FTE, saving the city some money. Implemented the new water software and rate structure. As you remember, there was a water rate increase that occurred this year, and we had new software associated with it in order to make those reading activities more effective for both Carrie, who works up in our office, but also Ron and Mike, who are out in the field. We were awarded a Tree City USA, Playful City USA, and Ice Age Trail community designations this year. Ice Age Trail designation is a new designation for us this year. Those other two we've received in the past, but again, we're re-awarded those. And Herb's tirelessly working on finding some place for those signs, right? Well, Herb's grandson is what I heard before. Organized the community recognition picnic, which continues to grow in attendance every year. Organized the Make a Difference Day, the Prairie Seed Collection, Arbor Day event, and Pollinator Promotion Contest. And when I say I mean Inga organized the community recognition picnic, the Make a Difference Day, Prairie Seed Collection, Arbor Day event, and Pollinator Contest, and also organized the 50 Years Together event and historic scavenger hunt, which took place at the Milton House, part of the Historic Preservation Committee. Inga works a lot on those types of activities and makes those welcoming and fun and engaging and interesting to the community, and advertises them and markets them. And again, it's kind of one of those things. What does the city do for events? We create events. We make events happen, and folks like Inga are essential to that. Complete redesign and launch of the City of Milton website. Again, a project spearheaded by Inga, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback and comments about the new website. Created and completed a Milton Business Climate Survey. This was an initiative started by the mayor and in partnership with the chamber. Put forth a Milton Business Climate Survey to chamber members, and then we posted it out on the city's website. And we got a good response from that. Showed that basically people feel that the city and the chamber is doing a great job supporting businesses. Revamp the Community Development Authority, or the CDA. That was a goal of mine for 2017, and we have done so, and created the work plan back in December for 2018, so that continues to move along. And conducted an insurance appraisal of all City of Milton properties. That was an undertaking that Ingo took on with our Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company to make sure that we had a proper inventory of all city property. And that probably sounds like, well, that should be pretty easy, right? what we found was that we were in much better compliance than most communities that CIVMIC deals with. CIVMIC has 44 members, and oftentimes a lot of communities are underreporting their property by millions of dollars. And we weren't nearly that far off. So it means we've been keeping track over the years. Couple of pictures of some of those kind of related accomplishments. On the left is the Arbor Day event, or is that Tails and Trails? Dog Park.
Both.
Both, okay. And then the picture on the right is the Milton Lions Club built the pergola over at Cross Ridge Park. Economic development. We purchased over 20 acres of land. Does anybody want to add anything? Dan, do you want to add anything to that, Inga? To those items that we had up there? Okay. Economic development. We saw a lot of activity in economic development in 2017, and we're only 16 days into 2018, and it looks like we're going to be following suit. Purchased over 20 acres of land in Crossroad Business Park for future development. Expanded the Crossroad Business Park across County Trunk Highway M to accommodate future development. Over $4.3 million in private, commercial, and industrial development and investment. That's up $2 million over the previous year. $4.3 million in private, commercial, and industrial development. That's a big number for the city of Milton. Over $2.5 million residential construction, including 15 new housing starts. That's up $1.2 million from the previous year, and twice as many housing starts. And actually, I could have added in there 15 new housing starts is more than twice the number of housing starts the city has seen for the last 3 years combined. We also saw 15 new business startups. And those are new business startups that occurred in 17. So what is not included in that is almost any of, maybe one, of Nate Rogers' tenants. And he has, I think, 7 tenants now. It does not include Diamond Assets. These figures of $4.3 million in private, commercial, and industrial development does not include Diamond Assets, does not include Nate Rogers' project. Those things will be included in the 2018 figures. So we saw a lot of growth, and we're seeing a lot of growth that will continue on into 18. And we planted the first new residential subdivision in Milton in over a decade. Here's a couple pictures of the residential activity that occurred. The picture on the left is Mike Lucas's project over on Sunset. When it's all said and done, there'll be 24 new apartments over on Sunset Drive. Mike previously built, I think, 5 buildings back in the early 2000s, and this is the final phase of his development. He's got a very nice project, very nice buildings, very nice apartments, so we're excited about that. Project on the right is Red Hawk Farms. That's the 33 new lots that I just previously referenced, and they'll begin construction here as soon as they can in 2018. Picture on the left there is Handy Art. I had to look at it on my own screen. Handy Art had a 35,000 square foot addition to their facility over on Sunnyside Drive. Picture on the right is Charter NEX. They have grown every single year that I've been here, and last year was no different. They had a 30,000 square foot addition to their front of their building for office use. And then on the next slide is a couple pictures of things yet to come. The one on the right has started to come, but there's still a lot more to it. We have a letter of intent from Badger Properties to construct between a 50 and 60,000 square foot spec facility behind Quick Trip. And the picture on the right is Badger State Maintenance's project. When that picture was taken, the project had not started. If you drive out there now, there are 7 new buildings out there, and they are over half leased. So that project has been a success and will continue to be a success. And again, all of those things don't even include Diamond Assets. We had the groundbreaking for Diamond Assets last fall on a very dreary day. But with that being said, I bet you any of us in this room would take that weather that day over what we have right now. I mean, nobody's even wearing a coat. So, but Diamond Assets broke ground last fall and will be scheduled to open up this spring, as the shell of their facility is finished. And I noticed today they had some tarp on the front of it, so they must be doing some exterior concrete work. I don't know why else they'd have a tarp on it, but so they're moving along. Just a few other kind of miscellaneous goals for 2017. We paid down over $1 million of outstanding general obligation debt. That is a lot of money. It sounds like a lot of money. Unfortunately, we've got a long, long, long ways to go. One of the caveats on that is, believe it or not, 2017 was the very first year we made a principal payment on this building. This building was finished in 2014, but we finally made our first principal payment in 2017 on it, and first principal payment on the police department on the DPW garage in 2017. And that building was constructed in 2012. Yeah. So we're moving in the right direction. $1 million is a lot to pay down, but we still have a lot to go. City staff assists with all city committees. I don't think there's a city staff member that doesn't assist in some way, shape, or form with the city committee. Provided excellent customer service and citizen service. Always here. As weird as it sounds, I hear way more positive comments about our customer service than I hear negative comments. Our group, both kind of internally and externally, is a group that does work with pride. They have pride in their work, and it's shown in the level of engagement that they exhibit when we go to them to kind of talk about projects. I continue to be impressed every year that I'm here with the creativity out in public works, of cost-saving measures, of ways to kind of do things differently in order to make things more efficient. They are truly engaged and really do kind of have the bottom line in mind at all times. Community involvement, we've got a very involved community group. We showed the picture of the Lions Club. Inga is intimately involved with the Lions Club. There's a number of folks that participate not only as part of their job, but outside of their jobs in community involvement, and that's a source of pride for myself. And then, again, continue to find creative and resourceful ways to maximize resources. Talked about that, especially out in public works, but the library staff is always doing that. Dan does that every day with decimal points and commas, but nonetheless, it's important. So, we have a long conversation about goals 2 weeks ago. We're going to have a subsequent conversation about goals tonight. And I had kind of started this list even before we started our conversation 2 weeks ago. But I will say I have added to and revised these goals. And these are overarching goals. These aren't Al's goals. These aren't the city administrator's goals or city hall's goals. But I think these are goals, kind of organizational goals, because in our packet tonight you've seen the departmental goals. Implement a 10-year street improvement program. Again, it's not create a 10-year street improvement program, but it's implement one, and we'll have that on the agenda tonight. Kickstart the Story Gardens project, which is somewhat underway already. Work with MAC and other organizations to strengthen and broaden tourism activities in Milton. This, I think, will be a reoccurring theme all throughout 2018, is how do we tackle this very difficult subject matter, and where do we go from here? It's not to say that things aren't getting done, but I think we need to have an earnest conversation about what's the best way and most effective way to do it. Evaluate and streamline code enforcement procedures and policies. The CDA is looking at this, but it's something that's been on Scott and Howie and I's radar for a long time. Continue to work with Milton Fire Department to execute their transitional goals. They're doing a fantastic job with Chief Banker and did a great job under Chief Lucas, and those things will continue on. I know Chief Banker has commented on many, many times that this is a long-term project. This isn't something that's going to just kind of, we'll wipe our hands and say, yep, we're all done with that. So we want to continue to be a part of that. Conduct a wastewater rate study. I don't know if Mark talked about it in his engineering report, but it's something that we have on our radar in 2018. Upgrade wastewater treatment plant with more environmentally friendly processes. That's part of the wastewater study, but also there's some improvements that we know we want to make and need to make at the treatment plant that are more environmentally friendly. Update the emergency preparedness plan. Both Howie and Scott, independent of each other, talked about this as part of their 2018 goals. Revitalize the community house in North Goodrich Park. I will admit this is a personal kind of one to me that I want to help spearhead, not only through Parks and Recreation and the Community Development Authority, but I think it's an area that I think needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. We did Parkview Drive. Milton House looks fantastic. Milton East looks great. And then there's the community house in the middle that is in dire need of some TLC. So I'm going to try to find some creative ways to get that done in 2018. And then continue to provide quality service to all citizens of Milton. That's a goal every single year and will continue to be a goal every single year, probably long after all of us are gone. But I know that there's a culture here that will carry that on. Challenges. There's always challenges to these things. We talked about debt service. 26 cents of every dollar collected goes to pay for the credit card. Maintaining service levels with declining funding sources. I know Jim and I are going to talk about that probably tonight, about road improvements. Jim from the Gazette. We continue to see declining funding sources every single year from the state. The governor passed a budget with a 15% increase in transportation aid, and the city of Milton still saw less money than we did the year before. That is a fact. That's the way it goes, and we have to find a way to be creative about it and try to continue to deliver the services that are expected of the community, because the community doesn't understand. In some cases, they don't care that we got less money from the state. They don't tie those two things together. They say, I want the same services for less taxes, and we need to find a way to continue to do that. But it gets continually challenging when the state continues to interfere with the local municipalities every chance they can. Now, step off my soapbox, but it is incredibly frustrating to me that they say they're good stewards of the taxes, but all they're really doing is just punishing local municipalities and saying they did it. It's frustrating. We need to continue to increase our tax base as best we can. It is literally one of the last and only things municipalities can do in order to increase revenue, for lack of a better term. As the cost of business continues to increase, the cost to pay for, or the ability to pay for that increased service is not commensurate with each other. They are not equal. The cost of doing business continues to increase at an increasing rate, and the ability to fund those increases continues to decrease at an increasing rate. So increasing the tax base is the only way you can do it. You can't borrow. They're going to take away the wheel tax. So you just got to increase the tax base. But what's important to kind of always remember in that process, at least to me, is remember to maintain and preserve the Milton way. We don't want to chase every development simply to increase the tax base. We don't want marginal developments. We don't want something that comes along that may build and then disappear 5 years from now. Nor do we want to mortgage our future chasing some kind of dream. We don't want Milton's version of Foxconn, where we're chasing after something, mortgaging our future with something that may or may not happen. So we want to maintain that Milton way of life as we continue to try to balance those other 4 challenges above it. So that concludes the presentation that I have for 2017 in review, and then 2018. Looking forward to 2018. So, any questions, concerns, comments?
One thing I'd like to add is that, all of these accomplishments are because of the city council supporting and working with all of the city staff. And it's so nice that we have such a good working relationship and can help the city reach its goals each year. I just want to say how much I appreciate all of you for doing that and being supportive. And I know that our city leadership staff really appreciates that too. So thank you very much.
I just wanted to say thank you for this presentation. Once again, just like last year, it's very nice, and I certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure that the citizens of Milton will also.
Thanks.
Microphones are cutting out there, folks.
Did you hear Dave?
Did you hear Linda?
Did you hear Linda, Dave?
Then you gotta cut it off in mid-sentence.
She was turning her button on and off.
Sorry, Dave. Trying to let somebody else speak.
Could we put this on our website?
Sure.
I mean,
the presentation
yeah.
is through the packet, but if you want.
Is there any other questions or comments before we go to our public hearing? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. So we have a public hearing tonight regarding the request to increase the speed limit on Parkview Drive from Milton Harmony Town Line Road to Blanche Avenue. And Al or Howie, if you want to give a little bit of background on that before I open the public hearing?
Yeah, I think between Scott, Howie, and I, we could probably give a little background. I think this conversation probably started long before we started to discuss it at the council, but Herb came to a public safety meeting last fall, maybe even last summer. April 2000, so last spring. I just had to go one more season. And talked about the whether there would be an appetite at that time from the Public Safety Committee to consider increasing the speed limit on Parkview Drive. Herb presented some information at that time that I've included in the packet related to DOT guidelines for speed. During the kind of that information exchange, we purchased, which I referred to in the presentation, Scott purchased a traffic counting device that not only counts traffic but measures speed and has a lot of kind of robust report generating capabilities from it. So we set that up in October on Parkview Drive for 5 days to kind of measure the speed. The information that the guidelines from the DOT are included in the packet. The information from the report on the traffic analysis is included in the packet. And as I mentioned in my memo, if the decision was to simply be based on the DOT guidelines and the information that we saw from that traffic generation, it shows that the speed limit should be 35. But we understand, Scott and I and Howie understand that that conversation is a three-dimensional conversation. It's not a two-dimensional conversation. So we didn't feel comfortable making that decision administratively. Plus, the council would need to make it anyways. So we wanted to gain more information. Asked the Public Safety Committee if they'd like to have a public hearing. So they agreed. So that's the purpose of the public hearing tonight. Is I think multifaceted to digest the information that is presented, not only from the DOT, but also from the traffic study, that traffic analysis that we conducted back in October, and then any comments that we get during the public hearing, and then any input that staff would have. So I think that kind of rounds it out as to how we got here. Oh, and I will say, also I forgot to pass this out, we posted it on Facebook, and as you know, in the year of 2018, Facebook is it's the place where people disseminate and generate their news. So we posted this on Facebook, and what I've printed off here is the entirety of the comments that were left on our Facebook page. And I know I have forwarded on to you, I think the 3 emails that I received regarding folks. And what I'll say to summarize it for the folks out in the audience, it has been unanimous that folks would like to see it increase, both on Facebook and in the emails that we've received. But again, it's all part of a larger equation. So, yeah.
So,
Oh, I didn't even see that one. Make it 65.
So, we're always trying to engage the public and we want to hear from them. And a lot of times, it's not very easy for people to make our meetings. So I do appreciate people taking the time to comment on Facebook and to communicate with us through the emails. Because we had 3 emails that were both in favor of it too. So I do want to thank the public for, in a digital way, participating in our public hearing. And they didn't even have to sign in except for to their Facebook account.
Can I,
I don't think anybody tweeted us.
Nobody tweeted it, but if you, Nancy, when I open the public hearing, you can come up and speak. Did you want to sign in? Okay.
since we're sharing community input before the hearing, is the hearing open?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I did have 2 constituents that called me that voiced negative
Okay.
to increasing this, and I will share that later. so.
All right, so I will open the public hearing, and the first person we have signed in is Herb Stinsky. And Herb, would you mind just coming up and getting this clipboard and putting it up there in case somebody else would like to sign into the public hearing, then they can sign. Thank you, I appreciate that. So we'll just have that up at the podium if somebody else wants to sign in and comment during the public hearing. That's fine, that's great. Okay. Herb Stinsky, and Dave, can you hear okay?
Well, good evening. My name is Herb Stinsky. I live at 321 Rogers Street here in Milton. And I just want to add just a little bit to the introduction of this matter. As far as background, you might ask yourself, why in the world did I bring this to the council? Why me? Don't I have better things to do, right? The key is this. I worked 35 years in Janesville. I've lived in Milton since 1974. And if I ever went to Janesville, I would have lived over on Plum Street when we first moved here. I live on Rogers Street now. And I'm a creature of habit. And what I would do is drive south on Rogers Street, High Street, turn right, go down to John Paul, turn left. I'm in Janesville. And even though I'm retired, coming up on 10 years, I was still doing the same old thing. But it wasn't until about a year and a half ago or so, my wife suggested we take an alternate route, and that is simply going down Rogers Street to St. Mary Street, turn left, go down to Parkview, turn right, and wow. I get out to Blanche, and the first thing I notice is, and Al can attest that I'm a conservative driver, and that is I look down at my speedometer and I'm not even halfway to the Y in that half-mile stretch, and I'm going 40 miles an hour. Oh my God, I mean, that's like what just happened here. And I then, got to the point where I kept taking that trip. The only way I could stay 5 miles per hour above the speed limit, or 30, is I had to set my cruise control. That's what I had to do. So that led me to, geez, I wonder how in the world, the city sets speed limits. How do they do that? And that's when I came across the Wisconsin statewide speed management guidelines that were published by the DOT back in 2009. But up till that time, I did approach the Public Safety Committee to at least engage a discussion, should that speed limit be something different, be increased. And Al inserted some of the comments that came from this study of how the state recommends cities, villages, and townships to set speed limits. And if you would just indulge me here for a second, is the first thing they recite is that they quote the 85th percentile for the members of the audience. The 85th percentile of speed is at or below which 85% of the observed traffic travels. And that the 85th percentile has been found to best represent the reasonable and proper speed perceived by motorists, and is a key characteristic for traffic conforming to a safe and reasonable speed limit. Well, in order to really look at this objectively so the council could ultimately make an informed decision, we needed to collect data. And that's when the chief graciously stepped forward and said, the city's right. I mean, the city should have some objective data in setting speed limits. And that led to the purchase of the equipment that was set up for the 5 days to actually track outbound vehicle, inbound vehicle, volumes and speeds. And I have to admit, when I saw the data that was collected, I was very surprised. Two things surprised me. Number one, the number of vehicles that use Parkview every day. I mean, I guess I never realized how many vehicles are out there. Number two is if you look at that 5 days worth of data and you just look at vehicles that were clocked 31 miles per hour to 40 miles an hour. 10,005 vehicles were clocked driving more than 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. Why is that? I mean, we have a lot of law-abiding citizens in Milton, but really, when you look at what research has told us, or at least the DOT, is that the fact, I'll get to it in just a second here, that several factors other than posted speed limits influence the 85th percentile free flow operating speed. The factors include access density, median type, parking along street, and pedestrian activity level. Well, when you look at that half-mile stretch between Blanche and Town Line Road, other than the driveway for the condo unit that sits right on Blanche and Parkview, there is a driveway that you can come immediately right out onto Parkview. And the Crossroads Park entrance, there are only two other driveways in that entire half-mile section. One is the former Pierce Farm, which no longer has a house sitting there. And the other driveway, of course, on the east side of the street is the Y. So as far as cross traffic, there is no parking. You can't park legally along that area. There really isn't any pedestrian traffic per se. People coming to the park from Blanche will walk along the sidewalk on the east side of Parkview and immediately take the paved trail that leads you away from Parkview. It's not like people are walking along Parkview. And most of the people that visit the park, I visit the park with my grandkids, will actually park up by the Y parking lot and just walk over to the play structure. And since the Y now has erected that 7-foot fence or 6-foot fence that completely encloses the practice area for their soccer leagues, you just don't see any pedestrian traffic really at all. One of the concerns was at the public safety meeting was the inbound traffic. Well, if we change the speed limit to 35, well, what's going to happen when people approach Blanche and they're traveling north on Parkview? Are they going to slow down? They have that area between Blanche and Lombard before they actually get to St. Mary's Church and that area where people are parking cars. And obviously we don't know. The thought is, again, perceived speed limit, this perceived speed I would safely drive at. I personally, when I see a lot of obviously parked cars and traffic and homes and driveways and whatever else, I slow down. And I dare say most people would. If that were a major concern of the city council versus leaving the speed limit at 25 or increasing it to 35, one option you certainly would have is to change the speed limit to 35, which it should be, in my estimation, and data shows that. But then later on this year, say late summer or so, after the speed limit has been changed and people are accustomed to that speed limit, is have the chief set up his radar units again, clock the speed of inbound traffic from Blanche to Lombard, and if it shows that people are not slowing down, one solution that many cities have used, Edgerton is a prime example of it. If you drive into Edgerton on Highway 59, or if you drive into Edgerton on Highway 51, you're going from 55 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. And there's an electronic sign right there, radar guns pointed right at your vehicle. It's telling you how fast you are going. The research has shown those signs will slow traffic down by at least 5 miles per hour. No, I can tell you, I look at that sign every time I drive in to see how fast I'm driving, because I know I'll get a ticket in Edgerton if I don't, abide by the law. One of the other concerns somebody had mentioned, I don't remember who it was, that's not important, is, well, there's children in that area. Obviously, there's a park there. The city always has the option of posting a sign that says speed limit 15 miles an hour when children are present. I don't think that's warranted or needed, but that's certainly something that could be considered down the road if the data supports that. But in the end, I'm going to sum up here, in the end, the key is this. If the speed limit stays the same, or if you change the speed limit to 30 miles an hour, or you change the speed limit to 35 miles an hour, what's going to happen is people are going to drive just like they're driving now. And that average inbound and outbound miles per hour, the 85th percentile is 38 miles an hour. That's really one of the keys. The other thing I'll point out too, just to mention this, that's in the study too. I'm quoting from this recommendation of the DOT. It is widely accepted that speed limits set at unrealistic levels above or below the 85th percentile have little impact on drivers' choice of speed. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak at the public hearing. I want to thank the police chief for the work that he has done in collecting and interpreting all this data and making it available. And I would urge the council to, tonight, to direct the administration to draft an ordinance change to be considered at the next earliest meeting, revising the speed limit between Blanche and Town Line Road to 35 miles an hour. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you for your thorough research. Is there anybody else? Did you want to come and sign in? Thanks.
Yes. Okay, I have
Go
signed
ahead.
up. My name is Nancy Lauder. I live at 229 Garden Lane in Milton. And I'm one of the people that's guilty of doing 45 down that stretch. I admit it. But I do think that you should look realistically at the fact that you have cornfield on one side and a not that often used park where you do not see children near the street. That being said, we owned an apartment across from St. Mary's for quite a few years. The traffic on that road varies a great deal. When they tore up John Paul, we had most of Milton using that street, and most of Milton was doing 50 miles an hour. So it has a legacy of not being obedient to the posted speed limit. However, I would watch the tenants in my building walk their children down to Milton East. So the closer you got to Milton East, the more the speed limit became realistic and was followed by the public in general, which leaves between the cornfield and the park on the way to the Y for all the rest of the children to deal with the fact that the rest of the city is doing 45. It would be, I think, more realistic to follow the guidelines that Herb Stinsky has pointed out, that 35 would seem much more realistic, and flashing light sign or the light sign saying you are actually doing 45 would encourage people to be more wary. Some of us forget to set our cruise control. So I am asking you to reconsider that and consider putting sidewalks in so that I feel the children have reasonable safety and reasonable caution to get to the Y. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to participate in the public hearing? Is there any other participants? Last call for anybody to speak at the public hearing. All right, with that, the public hearing is now closed and the council can discuss what their thoughts are on this issue.
May I go first, Madam
Please.
Mayor? Thank you. I'm taking public safety to heart here, and my philosophy is this. In fact, I'm more in favor of keeping general speed limits throughout the city at 25. And here's my rationale. I'd like us to look at the whole city, by the way, as a separate issue from this. But, number one, the psychology of human behavior, and I'm a psychologist, so I speak from my experience, I guess, and that's all I have. When I set limits for patients or clients, they always ask me, is that the upper limit or the lower limit? And I'll say to a client, I'd like you to cut back on your cigarette smoking. And so can you try to cut back? Yes, I can, Larry, but how fast do you want me to cut back? Can I cheat a little bit and just cut back slowly? And I think that carries over in speed limits. For me anyway, as I'm driving, I find that in general, I go 5 to 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, unless there's things that our residents pointed out, children present, a lot of traffic, parking, that kind of thing. But psychologically, if you put any speed limit up, people are going to, and Chief, you can jump in on this too, but people are going to tend to go over that a little bit. And so my theory is that if you set it at 35, people will probably go 40, 45, 50. That's just human nature. The second thing we got to remember is the faster a vehicle is going, at least in my studies and what I've learned, the faster it's going, the longer it takes to slow down and stop. Whether you're a good driver, in-between driver, or not so good of a driver, it still takes a certain amount of time for a vehicle to stop. And the third thing is, the faster you're going, the more damage that's going to be done in that collision, whether it's to a person, an animal, or a building, or another car. So that's just my input. So.
Okay, I have one
Teresa?
comment. Just to comment back to something you had said, and you noted that people, by human nature, go with the limits that you are saying, that if you give them a limit, you had talked about cigarette smoking and say you could have this many would be your top and this would be your bottom. And I reflect to something that Herb had said right at the end, and that if you make your expectations unreasonable, then they can't even adhere to them. And so that if you have someone trying to quit and you say, what's the bottom or the most that I could have? And you say, well, 1. And someone that has, tried to live within those limits before, 1. Of course they can't live within that. Same with the speed limit. If you say that, someone that trying to drive 25 miles an hour in a speed limit area that looks to them like it should be 45 or up to 50 at least, just is too difficult to follow, so they speed. And so if you make it something more reasonable, that, I'm not implying everyone will just get in there and speed regardless. It just seems like a more reasonable speed limit.
Thank you, Teresa. Anyone else? Jeremy?
Larry, did you mention? Two people that wish to not have that rate. Both of them said, I feel people drive way too fast and don't wait.
And they didn't live on that street?
No,
I
they
take
did
it.
not
Okay.
live on that street. That's correct. I do not live on that street either. I gotta point that out, so. But I will tell you this, I live on North Janesville Street and people drive way over the limit there too, on a regular basis. Anyone would like to come and join me in trying to get out of my driveway or out of the driveway of the business across the street, please do so because you'll know what I'm talking about.
I'm only been.
Can I say one other thing? When I live in the city, I assume that there's going to be lots of people, lots of traffic, lots of congestion, and so safety is an issue. When I talk about public safety, I assume as a citizen that I'm going to go slower in the community than I will out on I-90. But here is a good example. It's 70 miles an hour on I-39. When I travel on I-39 and I'm going 70, people are looking at me like I'm an old man. And they're driving 80 and 85. Same concept.
Chief, I had a question for you on, so John Paul Road coming in, and I think I'm correct that we've had a significant increase in traffic since the bypass coming in on John Paul Road. Comes in from, does it go 55, 45, 25? Is that how? And how, do you know how we're doing with that? Are people, because it's a little bit similar to what we're going to be asking them to do on Parkview, but we're not going to ask them to come down from 55 to 25. So how is that working? I know that there's officers that sit there when you come into town sometimes.
I don't have any good data to show for you. We did not set our device up there to do a traffic or speed count. It'd really be anecdotal. Like the guy who tailgated me while I was trying to go from John Paul to High Street this afternoon. I'd have to run the data, and as we've been talking, I've been checking accident data and things like that. We don't let me just bring that up here. We have a handful of accidents that occurred over the last 3 years between Madison and High Street on John Paul. More than we've had on Parkview, I would say that. That's what the accident data shows. Other than that, though, I don't think I could give you an objective indicator on how John Paul is.
Thank you.
Besides John Paul, we have we have 59 that comes through, and we have Janesville Street from the Fort side that comes through, and they all experience 55 to 25, whether they bump to 45 to get to 25 or not. And I think the proposal or the idea here is from 35 to 25. And I guess I would input the rest of my opinion here, but I think the numbers kind of reflect what representation for the city would be if 85% of the people seem to be in agreement on what it feels like to drive on that road, what speed it needs to be. I find it hard to stay at 25 too when I'm heading towards the Y and going out. Real easy coming in to stay at 25 because I know what I'm approaching. I'm approaching houses, I'm approaching a church, but going out that way, I definitely can see a raise there.
I guess my thoughts pertain to this document from the state, and just want to read off two sections of it. Not really as my opinion, but just to read off two sections I think that should influence our decision to some extent. But one of the things mentions that one of the goals of looking at developing a speed recommendation is to be a reasonable speed so the majority of drivers will comply voluntarily. And I think that's what Herb's trying to bring up here. as one of the ideas of maybe doing this is so that you get the voluntary compliance. Another section, though, I want to mention, which might pertain more to what you were talking about coming into the city. In setting the speed limit, the number of speed limit changes along a route should be minimized, and changes should be made in significant increments. For speed zones outside of incorporated cities and villages, speed limit changes should be made in increments of 10 miles per hour, though increments of 5 miles per hour are permissible when justified. Within incorporated cities and villages, an increment of 5 miles per hour should be implemented. So I think if we were to raise the speed limit, I think 30 might be a better one than 35, because it follows the sense that you're going from 30 down to 25, following that 5 mile per hour change of speed. It's also puts you relatively close to the it's 85th percentile in the sense that it's 38 versus, it's 8 off rather than 5 off, or within 5 or whatever. But it also keeps you close to the mean speed, which according to this also, if you stay within 10 miles per hour of the mean speed, there's been studies that say that crash rates go significantly down. So just points of things in here that I found interesting and wanted to comment on. Not necessarily stating my opinion, but just want to read that off.
I have a couple of things that I just wanted to bring up. First of all, I'm just going to start out with the other entrances because I like your idea, Herb, of the electronic sign. The problem is we have Janesville Street, John Paul North, John Paul Road going south, we have M, and we have Madison Avenue coming in on 59. And soon, once the new residential development comes through, then we'll probably have Hilltop as another entrance into the city. So, outside of hiring new police officers, where is it that a residential street that is not even a truck route should have a higher speed limit than 25 miles an hour? Now, I have lived in Milton for 20 years in August. From my backyard, from my house, whether I'm on the upper level or my walkout basement, I can see just past Blanche, and I can also see just past Lombard. Now, I will tell you exactly what I saw just this past weekend. I was not doing anything in particular. I like my views out my windows, so when I walk around my house, it's pretty natural for me to be looking out my windows. One of the residents on Parkview Drive pulled into her drive, in front of her drive, and she went to back into her driveway. While she did that, there was a car that passed her. Now, normally, and I do watch, because there are kids in that neighborhood. Normally, when somebody comes in on Lombard, you can see, on Blanche, you can see once they get past Lombard that they've got their brake lights on. So I can see that they are slowing down, although I don't know exactly what speed limit they're going. But these are things that I watch on a daily basis when I'm at home. I see people racing down Parkview Drive. In the last 20 years that I have lived here, I have spoken with many of the residences that live on Parkview Drive. Now, when we first started discussing this, I actually went out and spoke with several of the people that live on Parkview Drive, and there was only one person that I spoke with that said, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind it being raised. Well, interesting enough, it was the same household who just almost got hit trying to back into her driveway. So this is not something that I take very lightly. I have ran across to Parkview Drive from my backyard when a young man was hit by a bicycle. It's been several years. I think it was actually right after Terry Hawkins left. When we were kind of working on our police department study. In any case, I have several things to say about the park.
So I just want to be clear, because I want to make sure that I understand correctly what we're talking about. We're talking about, it's not going to be 30 or 35 in the, too far into the residential area.
Oh,
So
right.
Can you correct?
Just
to Blanche.
Just to Blanche.
Okay, all right.
And we only received one negative, someone that was opposed to it after sending out all of your letters, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't receive anyone who was opposed to grazing.
I thought
Somebody
Larry
may have
said two.
Somebody may have
Larry said
contacted
two,
you
right?
individually, but
Mm-hmm. Larry's had
You said two people.
2.
One in the grocery store, one at the hardware store, so unsolicited, but they buttoned me and called.
Okay, so we didn't receive any.
But it was
from
gentlemen.
Parkview Drive.
And that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that you didn't receive anything from Parkview Drive because most of those houses are rental properties. And a lot of those people are in or out. Actually, one of those people in one of those buildings, and I think it might have been the one that you had owned, or right next to the one that you had owned.
Why wouldn't they express their opinion regardless of whether they're rental or not?
Well, but they did express it to me when I walked.
Well, why wouldn't they express it to the council? Why wouldn't they express it to the council?
I don't know, maybe because Tuesdays are not the place to be right
No,
here.
to contact the
Uh-huh.
city or if they were unable to attend the meeting.
I can't give you an answer to that. I really can't.
Or email us. I mean, the only contact we've had were several people that are for the changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I have to say about the whole thing. Crossridge Park is the second largest park in the city of Milton, first being Schilberg. And it's incomplete. It's a work in progress. It has been for many years, as Bruce can attest to. We had intentionally put the request into the state and followed up with the state to make sure that we had a bike trail and a pedestrian access from Town Line Road to come in specifically on Parkview Drive so that they could come in and go to the Y and come on down to Goodrich Square or wherever it is that they're going. There was a lot of work that was put into that. And so I can tell you, as far as the park goes, the paved trail is incomplete. There is not a trail that goes up to Town Line Road from Crossridge. It's not there. We don't have the money to do it yet.
Linda, do you know where it was going to be designated to be? That trail, has that been?
No, it was the trail on Town Line Road. When they put that overpass in, you see that there's a fence and all that. There's also a bike trail there. And then it goes out to there's also one that goes out to the roundabouts.
So was there supposed to be a bike lane on Parkview, or was there supposed to be a separate paved trail? Do you know what I'm talking about? What question I'm asking?
I understand what you're asking, but you see, the problem that we ran into, and Howard can help me out with this, is that road only has the bike lane going so far. And the reason that we did that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Howie, is because we were waiting for that future development. And we were going to just utilize the side of the road. However, from the Y over to Lombard, I'm sorry, I always get these confused. From the Y over to Blanche, there is not a paved bike trail on Parkview. And there isn't because of the road. We were waiting for future development to do that. So in essence, this whole request is kind of happening before we just had a chance to finish up what we've already started here. The road isn't wide enough right now. There's a ditch and there's, because of the pavement and the shoulder on the road, we couldn't take that bike trail farther down. We were gonna utilize,
The bike lane,
yeah,
not the trail.
right, the bike lane. I think I've already said that there was a child that was hit by a truck. And so, one of the things that am kind of wondering as far as the speed limit goes is, so you increase the speed limit, say 30 to 35, and you get down to that stop sign 10 seconds sooner? Is that really worth all of this, what we're doing here? Because my concern is I have a park out here. I'm a firm believer that our schools and parks should not have any speed limit higher than 25. And I don't see any higher speed limit at Goodrich or Central Park or King Park, Schoberg, Tails and Trails. When you go out to the dog park, it's the same thing. Lamar, 25. These are very big concerns for me. We have been working hard to get these parks in order. We've been trying to get more people in and out of there. We have already determined as a council that we are a pedestrian-friendly community and that we are a bicycle-friendly community. So I'm not gonna go on and on about this because I could. I'm opposed. I'm opposed to increasing the speed limit, and it's partially just for my own guilt too. I have a lead foot too, Herb. I go out.
I think we get your point, Linda.
I go out.
But as we have noted in the past, I mean, there are many, the park at Goodrich was there for many years with a 30-mile speed limit along Highway 26, Janesville Street, and I don't remember any incidences from the park being a problem with that speed limit. You also indicated that that bike trail would extend then to Town Line Road, which of course has a 45-mile speed limit.
40.
Okay, 40?
Yeah.
Okay, 40 as opposed to 35.
That's okay.
But then it's okay. So I guess I'm confused as to what your rationale would be in terms of the speed limit, Linda. It seems to, and as Herb pointed out, the walkway in the park at near the Y actually goes away from the street. And, you know, there just are a lot of factors that continue to be talked back and forth and don't really have rhyme or reason in terms of the speed limit. So I think we need to be careful about what we're trying to point as a rationale.
Well, actually, Teresa, when the speed limit was 30 in the Goodrich Square area, Beth Drew came to the council and talked to several people about the speed limit on that street. It was when her daycare first opened. And if I remember right, Howie, you can help me with this, we actually did a traffic study with the state, but I thought that they determined because it was a truck route, we could not do anything with that until the bypass came through. And then that road became a local road. So we could change the speed limit on it. Am I right?
The part on from Madison Avenue, that's still Highway 59. So it never, it's, so it's still under state jurisdiction for the speeds, the Highway 59 part. The McEwen Lane part is where the speed got changed on that by the daycare, so, for that one.
It was the McEwen Lane?
Yeah, the McEwen Lane, that portion did, so. Or that was the part that the speed got talked about, but the highway ones, we couldn't do anything about those ones, for the Highway 59 ones.
And that's 30?
Yeah, and there's school speed limits in there, like the 15 and stuff, but.
So if we're already gonna go 35 and 40 miles an hour and the posted sign is 25, why do we even need to change it? I'm trying to understand that rationale. I mean, I understand that some people are in a hurry, but I also know that there's other roads that you have a faster speed limit that you can go to. If you want to get on Highway 26 and fly, you can go out 59, go through the roundabouts, and then put your foot to the metal. That's what I do. And I know I'm not going to get a ticket because the speed limit there is 65.
You getting all this, chief?
You can review the video later.
So noted.
Okay, one more comment, and then I think we're gonna move on.
Oh,
Or-
Dave, have any comments?
Dave, did you have
Have you heard anything from him?
No, it's like I told Albert. I don't have a problem with it. Ever since they started to do the work on Parkview resurfacing, when I turn off St. Mary's heading south on Parkview, I hit the cruise at 25, sit back and watch the scenery. I don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem.
Behind me sometimes, but it's not a big deal.
I do have a general question.
Sure, go ahead.
And Chief, if you can't answer this, or I don't want to put you on the spot, okay, but I'm going to ask a question. In general, it's up to your officer's individual discretion in terms of how to handle a stop for speeding, correct?
Generally, yes. And I was kind of wondering about how to address that question. No, that's okay. Oftentimes that's the fix that the public expects. We'll just do more enforcement, no matter which direction you go. And, as I was preparing kind of my end of the year reporting, and I've done I like data, and that's why I find the data interesting in this case, but nonetheless, last year, individual calls from the 911 center to a police officer in the city of Milton, here, you have to go do something, those types of calls, and that is like 80 different things that we could get called to. Even taking out all of the code things that we work on that Al referenced earlier was over 1,000. Even taking those out, we were at over 16,000 calls last year. A moment like tonight, sitting here right now, I have one officer working. And it's difficult for us to commit to fixing this with an enforcement. So then it becomes a policy decision to try to come up with a reasonable solution.
Can I take it just one step further?
Sure.
Being a councilman, you probably will pull me over, but no, that's beside the point.
They will.
No,
I can attest
but,
to it.
but if I was just Joe Smith,
Yeah.
and I was coming into Milton, and I was on Parkview, and the speed limit was 35, but I was going 40, and an officer was present, would I likely be pulled over at least? I'm not saying would I likely get a ticket on it, that's irrelevant to the issue. Would I be pulled over, or would it be, well, that's only 5 over and we're not gonna get too worked up about that?
Yeah, typically at 5 miles an hour over, we don't engage at that point. There's a lot of variability with that and all sorts of discretion and, going back on my days of running radar, which is a long time ago, but my rule was 12 to 13 was a stop, anything over 15 was a citation. But that was a different community, a different time, different traffic patterns, all of that. But typically 5 miles an hour over, we aren't taking time to make that contact.
So it's not, given that, it's not too far for me to stretch to say that a 35 mile an hour speed limit would easily shift to 40 or 45. Human nature speaking. It's a hard question.
It is.
And I won't quote you on it.
And
Paper doesn't either. I'm exploring my premise of earlier.
And I will tell you, and nobody's asked this question here tonight, but I've been asked it several times outside of this. Well, what's your opinion? I almost have to recuse myself because I live in the neighborhood that exits out onto Blanche. And the data is the data. And I love data. My emotional response is, if it does truly become 40 to 45 miles an hour is acceptable by the time you hit Blanche Drive, where my wife and kids are pulling out from the stop sign to get onto Parkview, I'm concerned with that. But that's an emotional response, and I think that's Linda's case too. It's an emotional reaction to seeing what happens on that street. But the data's the data, and I'm glad I'm not the one having to make this decision.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate your candidness.
But Herb, you presented some data that suggests how people adjust their speed, right? Am I remembering what you said?
There are a ton of different kinds of studies that look at incremental changes in speed and what compliance is and all of that. And that's kind of what has fed into this DOT document. Yeah, there's all sorts of things out there talking about that driver behavior sort of issue.
It seems to me like regardless, over 50% of the people are not going to be driving 25 out there, whether it's 25 or not. Is that what the data suggests, that that's what's happening, right? They're not driving?
It's 25 miles an hour now, and they are not driving 25 miles an hour.
Okay, so then.
The mean is currently 33.
So then the question becomes, I guess, too, for me, and when I think about kids, but I'm thinking about overall, we have ordinances, and we want our community to follow these ordinances, and I think we want to be as consistent as possible. So if we're going to post something at 25, but really we're all just like kind of secretly agreeing, okay, we know everybody's going to go 30 and 35, and we're going to keep it posted 25, and we're just not going to give them tickets, then I think for me that becomes a credibility issue of how are we enforcing our ordinances. So I guess if we're going to have it 25, but we're all going to agree that nobody's going to drive 25, and we're not going to give anybody tickets for driving over, then let's raise it. I guess that's my thought on it, and we're never going to have enough manpower. No matter what, we're not going to hire 10 new officers and have 24-hour surveillance on speed in that area or really any other area. We're going to do the best that we can with the manpower we have. So that's just my thought.
I'll choose to make a motion, and that will be to increase the speed limit on Parkview Drive from Town Hall Road to, what's the name of the street?
It's Blanche.
Blanche Drive to 35 miles per hour.
I'll second, and are we just directing staff to make a ordinance, or are we actually?
Mark, is there something a little bit clearer how we could word the motion?
I believe, similar to what you suggested at the outset, if there's a discussion to support an increase in the speed limit, the appropriate motion would be a motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance to bring back to council, which would increase the speed limit in the area from Town Hall Road to Blanche Street. Is that right? Town Hall, yeah, Town Hall. Town line.
Do we all agree that he said town hall, but we really mean town for future depositions or something?
Right. Blanche Road to 35 miles per hour. So that would be the appropriate motion.
Okay. Is that your motion, Teresa?
Sure.
And Jeremy seconded. Okay. Is there further any last? I mean, we're not going to keep discussing it, but
One more comment.
Are we only voting on the approval to present an ordinance for our discussion? I just want clarification of that. If I'm voting yes, I'm voting yes to have the ordinance drafted. I'm not voting yes
if you were hypothetically to vote yes, it would be just on the ordinance to be drafted.
To be drafted.
To be drafted. We're not voting on an ordinance, we're voting on the staff drafting an ordinance. Ryan?
I just want to say I'd recommend actually going 30 instead of 35, because then we follow more of the state guidelines and stick to a 5 mile per hour incremental change from 30 down to 25 when you enter the city itself. Plus, then also you're matching the same speed as our state roads that go through the middle of the city as well. So I would actually recommend 30 rather than 35.
So that would be, so it sounds like these requests, because there's a motion and a second.
I'm requesting a friendly amendment to change it to 30 miles an hour instead of 35.
No, she can change her amendment and the second can agree to the change. It's up to you, Teresa.
I would prefer 25, based on the data that was collected.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so it's 4-2, and it passes. To count like that, wow.
So just so everybody's clear, and I know Herb and I talked about this, the motion was to direct staff to draft an ordinance to increase the speed limit on Parkview Drive from Town Line to Blanche. Mark and I will work, mostly Mark, to prepare that ordinance, and we'll bring that back to a council meeting, the next available council meeting. The next meeting is February 6th, but I'll have to talk to Mark offline to see if that is an attainable date. So
it will, people will have another opportunity to voice their opinion, to contact council members, to come to another meeting. So we are moving along the process.
There will not be a public hearing.
There won't be a public hearing, but that doesn't mean that people can't come in and speak on the night that, yeah.
Just so you're aware, for this issue or others, the council has the discretion to hold a public hearing on any item that they'd like to. Could hold a public hearing on whether you should hold a public hearing or not, I guess, but please don't.
We're not into the process that much. Okay, so I think this will move a little bit quicker. Discussion of possible action regarding the 2018 pavement improvement program.
So what I've included here, and I guess, well, now you kind of set it up. You said this is going to move a little bit quicker. So. You know, 2 weeks ago we had a discussion about goals. And one of the things that I took out on a personal level of that discussion was that I can do a better job of communicating and sharing with the council the information that we as staff or our consultants have put together that allows us to make the decisions, or at least bring forth the recommendations that we bring forth. There was a lot of discussion about a 10-year plan, capital improvement plan, wastewater plan, water plan, and for the most part, all of those things exist. So I think what I want to do is, when I have the opportunity to have these types of discussions, I want to bring as much information as I can to kind of complete the picture. So what I've done tonight is, yes, we're talking about the 2018 pavement improvement program, but I wanted to also take this opportunity to share with you the information that goes into that discussion. So attached is the 10-year pavement improvement program that we work off of. And when I say we, I mean Howie and I and Mark and Dan and anybody else that's involved in this discussion. This is a piece of information that we started to put together last year and will continue to update on an annual basis. So when we're looking at an annual pavement improvement program, it's not just kind of a matter of we pick streets out of a hat or wait to see who's complained the most about their condition of the street. There is a rhyme and there is a reason to how we make those decisions.
And it's objective.
It is objective. It's as objective as possible. There's some limitations to that because funding is finite. So as you look at this 10-year pavement improvement program, if we were to complete everything that is put in year one, we'd need to come up with $613,000. At this time, we don't necessarily have $613,000. So that's where the level of subjectivity may enter the equation. What can we do with the money that we have? So we've mapped this out. The purpose of this plan is to address the streets that need repair the most, and then try to address as much preventative maintenance as possible in order to increase the life of the streets that are already in stable condition to make them in good condition, so we don't have to have this kind of yearly, drastic pavement improvement program. So that's how we came up with what we are proposing as the 2018 pavement improvement program. So now, with that information in mind, I'm going to say some things that probably sound very contradictory to what I just said. If you look at the second spreadsheet that I've provided, it outlines all the things that we'd like to address potentially in 2018. And as you look, the total cost of that is $1.2 million. First off, that's an estimated cost. And second off, the important piece of information to remember from that is some of those things don't have a funding source yet determined. So they might not occur in 2018. But we want to give ourselves the best, put us in the best position to get the best information we can to go out to bid and then see where that bid information comes back. So as you saw in the memo, this all we're really asking for tonight is does the council agree with the streets that we've outlined as being streets of importance that we can start to prepare engineering documents for and eventually potentially go to bid for, so that we can receive information back, at which time the council then will really have the final say in that process. So we're at step probably 2 of the process, and there's still several steps that the council will be able to interject in. So we're looking at Catman Street, North Side, the Front Street Alley, North Goodrich Park parking lot, Community House parking lot, Front Street, and Woodcrest. We will not be able to address all of those in 2018. That's already a given. There's no way we can. As you can see, Front Street in and of itself is $800,000. In the memo, I talk about the potential loss of the wheel tax revenue, which seems more and more likely as Madison continues to take actions. I don't foresee any reason why they wouldn't take this action based on the actions they've already taken in 2017 or 18. So we'll have to find some creative funding sources. Some of those come from LRIP, some of those can come from TIF, some of those can come from utilities. For example, the Front Street project is really a utility project as much as it is a street project. So the utility will share in a large portion of that reconstruction. And those are the kinds of things that we need to determine through the engineering and through the bidding process. Community House and Goodrich Park, depending on where those numbers come back, those might be able to be fully funded through the TIF district because they're public parking lots. They're public improvements, not to a public facility, but public improvements. And then Catman Street, a portion of that is already been provided or will be provided to us through the state LRIP money, which we got notice of back in December. And then Woodcrest is one of those things that we know is kind of a long-standing need that we need to do additional kind of engineering on before we can kind of figure it out. So, a lot of information, but again, I wanted to kind of provide you a larger picture of how we come to this spot every year when we say, here are the streets we think we should do this year. There's a lot of information that goes into it from behind the scenes, that a lot of work Mark puts into it, a lot of work that Howie puts into it through the annual PACER rating updates, a lot of work that Dan puts into it as we try to project funding sources, a lot of work that I put into it as we try to find creative ways to fund things and look at other funding sources. So ultimately what we've lit upon are these 6 possibilities for 2018. And again, all we're really looking for tonight is, does that make sense with the council? Do you agree with those 6 streets based on the information that's included in this gigantic spreadsheet, which I know you haven't had time to digest, but that's what we're looking for tonight, and then we'll come back with more concrete numbers, hopefully in February, so that we can go out to bid in March.
Well, I must say, Catman could use some improvements.
No, it looks great. Thank you for doing it all. Kind of lays it all out very nicely and gives an opportunity to look ahead. And so that's great.
I think it looks great too. Are you looking for a motion to approve the schedule?
We don't have to have a motion, but I mean, if you want to make a motion, it would be really kind of just authorize staff to move ahead with the proposed 2018 pavement improvement program.
On
This
the-
larger document is going to change every single year. As the PASER ratings go up and down, as improvements are made, streets are going to slide way further down, as funding sources kind of change. If we lose the wheel tax, this plan mostly will go in the trash.
Yeah.
If we don't lose the wheel tax, we'll be able to kind of keep it rolling. But, so this is a living document.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I only see the 1, 2 on here, is that it?
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, as far as a PASER rating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Anderson Lane from East High to McEwen.
that's where you live, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Not me.
No, I'm just kidding.
We just got a go-kart, so we can go off now.
Those trails are in the works, not on the sidewalks. See, everybody's speeding and they're on go-karts.
Yeah, and I will say, to your,
goes 20 miles per hour.
so when we put that radar detector back out, just drive the go-kart back and forth, distort the data.
Don't let Linda get a hold of that go-kart.
But to your point, Jeremy, I appreciate you bringing that up, whether you meant to or not. I mean, I do believe, and I've said this many, many times, I do believe that the city of Milton has some of the best, if not the best, infrastructure in the entire Rock County area.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, but we need to be able to maintain that. And this 10-year improvement program really gets at that. It allows us to maintain the infrastructure to the level that we've all come accustomed to, and I think our residents now expect.
Right.
If we lose the wheel tax, we will not be able to do that. That's the plain and simple truth of it. We will not be able to find funding sources that will be able to kind of continue that level of service up. It's just, it's not possible. It will not be possible, plain and simple.
Could you explain that? You had written in there somewhere that with the wheel tax that we estimate doing road construction between 200,000 and $1 million a year.
Yeah.
But then without that 200,000 or 165, that we would only do 30 to 50,000. How's that work?
Right, and that's a good question. And I'm sure it's probably one that Jim has too. Because we're able to use the wheel tax dollars to leverage other projects without that sustainable funding source that we know, we won't be able to kind of leverage, like Catman Street, for example. We're getting a portion of money from the state, from the LRIP program, and then we can fund the rest of it through wheel tax or through general fund dollars. If we don't have the wheel tax dollars, then it all has to come from general fund. That means another project's not being done. So we're not able to kind of leverage those funds. Or in projects that are part utility, part improvement, it'll all have to come either from the utility or have to come from general fund. We don't have the ability to raise the general fund due to expenditure restraints and levy limits. We don't have the ability to raise the general fund enough to cover that cost. Back when the wheel tax was adopted in 2016, I made this analysis, and I've revisited this analysis since then when I've testified at the state. It is cheaper for a family with 2 cars to pay the wheel tax than it would be if we were to tax for that exact same amount. It's cheaper to have the wheel tax than it would be to put it on the general tax levy. But we can't even put it on the general tax levy because of expenditure restraint. The only way we could do it is if we cut the city's budget, which would basically mean, okay, if we want to spend, if we want to do $250,000, and this is going to sound really hyperbolic and unnecessarily, crass, but if we want to do $250,000 for the streets every year, then the council needs to tell me which staff member I have to lay off. Because that's the only other way we do it. The wheel taxes gives us that flexibility, gives us that dedicated resource to fund just transportation-related improvements and infrastructure-related improvements. Without that, there's just not a lot of other options. So does that answer your question?
Thank you for that explanation. I think that anybody that's going to watch us on YouTube too would, the more we let people know that that's what our situation is, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, I hope you're right.
Dave, is there anything you wanted to say?
No.
So we don't necessarily need a motion, but if you want to do something, you can. Otherwise, I'm just gonna move on?
That's fine.
Okay. Discussion and possible action on 2018 general engineering work order from Baxter and Woodman.
This is a annual work order that Baxter and Woodman puts together. This is same as it was in 17, same as it was in 16. And their leadership just needs a council approval on this item.
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Item number 10. Thanks for sticking around. You gotta stay for team building. Discussion and possible action authorizing staff to execute a farmland lease agreement.
So we have several farmland lease agreements with the Heth family, Hull family, and Pierce family farms. These are almost exactly the same farmland leases that existed in 2015. Last year, 2 of them dropped off, but now they're back on. So this is, again, just an annual lease renewal process because we only do these on 1-year terms. In case development comes along, we're not buying somebody out of a long-term lease agreement.
I'll move that we authorize staff to execute a farmland lease with Heth Farms for March 1st, 2018 to March 1st, 2019.
And then, did you want to do each one individually?
No, I don't. Let me,
There's Heth, Hull, and Pierce.
okay.
All the same dates?
Yes.
Okay, as well as the one with Hull Farm and the Pierce.
Second.
Okay, everybody got that? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries and we got I'll be signing away.
Yeah. No.
Okay,
That's okay.
thanks. All right, so, back to our common council goals. Do you guys want to work on this tonight and then go, we have a closed session? Or do you want to do this at another meeting that we don't, I mean, it's.
Can I ask what we were going to do today? I was a little confused as I started reading everybody, and then because the department organization of all the departments. I thought you guys were just going to kind of take all of ours and merge.
Well, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, the idea was for you guys to choose top goals. And I wasn't sure if everybody had a straight, these are my 10 top goals.
I get it.
Yeah,
Well-
some did, some didn't.
Okay.
So, I guess I had the same question that you did as to what was our goal for our goals tonight, and maybe it's just to have a general discussion to come up with a game plan with what do we do with this information now and bring that back to the next meeting. However you guys want to do it. The only reason I included the department goals was to just kind of add some supplemental information. Hey, just so you know, these are the things I did. It. I had this same memo in 2017 at the beginning of 2017. I wanted to do it in 2018 as well, to say provide some information of here's some things that we talked about. And it looks like staff is already doing it. Mm-hmm. But I will say that we had a meeting as department heads and we discussed all of the council's goal discussion, brainstorming session. So some of those things were already naturally plugged into departmental goals. So however you guys want to proceed from here is perfectly wonderful to me.
Having been through lots of these discussions before, it does seem like it would be better or easier for all of us to have one person, Anissa, go through all of the documents and say, by looking through all these, I see that the vast majority of you have indicated that the 5 goal areas that come up the most should be this, and this. And then the next time we meet, we can talk about, okay, out of those 5 goals, what do we want to have as our objectives or our things to work on for the coming year? You know, if we pick, I don't know, public safety or whatever we feel the goal should be, and then what do we need to work on?
Okay,
I
that
agree with
sounds good. We
Teresa.
can do that for the next meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that sounds good too, and,
I'll make that
and I love the idea of having the city staff goals. I thought that was really great, that we had those in there too, and I think that, like, for me, I was unsure if we were doing subjects or what we had listed underneath each of them. So if you could just put them all together,
Compile.
I think that would be good,
A,
but
a readable document. And Jeremy, did you have something to hand out?
No,
Or,
what I sent out to everybody,
Okay.
it wasn't included, I didn't get it in early enough to get it in the agenda
Okay.
like everybody else's. So
Okay,
Teresa wanted to not have to look at two different things when we were discussing it
okay.
tonight.
So you,
Yes.
did you hand it out to everybody? Did you check?
Here, you can have a copy.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to.
I emailed it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Oh, okay, all right. So
Yeah.
that's not
See,
something
we
that we don't, it's not new. Okay.
No, it's a repeat of what I said at the last meeting.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have all the information so I can compile something.
May I request or offer that you consider the revised process that I presented? That
The most
we-
recent thing?
Yeah, that we have
Okay.
objectives, which are overarching, broader perspective topics of interest in the city, and I did that on my document. And then we have goals, which
Except
are.
it's reverse. Goals are
No.
overarching and objectives are underneath.
Well, it depends how you phrase it. I'm coming from the old school. The old school was.
We're coming from a teaching
My,
background.
yeah, and I'm coming from a management perspective. Objective was, we want to increase sales by 100%. What are the goals to reach that goal, to reach that objective? So however you do it, but I think we need that overarching because everything can't be real specific.
Sure.
You need an overarching direction
Okay.
and then
I'll
the goals.
work with Al on that.
Yeah, you do it the way you want. If you want to do it in the teaching style, that doesn't matter to me. I also hold a master's in education, so I can go with the teaching
You can
style.
go with the flow. You're more flexible than we
I
are.
have two masters, one in management, one in education, I can do either one. Thank you.
So you got that?
Mark, should we do the law way?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, what's legal and
Yeah, so let's leave the way.
Oh, we'll go with the flow and ask for forgiveness.
I recommend either way be the legal way.
Thank you. It's
just
one of the
do it
most,
under 35.
it's why we pay you the big bucks.
Now, and I did a revised myself. Do I need to, I brought extra copies, I gave everybody on the council one, but do I need to give one to the department heads too? Do you?
I could scan it in and
Okay.
email it out to everybody.
Great. I apologize for my sloppiness. Please forgive me.
All right, and thank you, everybody, for doing that. Okay, so, general items, committee reports. Does anybody, we'll start with Linda and work our way down. Anybody have committee reports?
No, actually, I have a general item, and it's.
If we start with you, we're not ending with you. Your first and last word.
Got it. I was kind of hoping that I wasn't going to have to ask this question, but I feel like it is something that now we need to totally take a look at. I would like to actually study the speed limits and the entrances of our city, and as a council, decide where our primary entrances are going to be with the way that our city is set up, and adjust our speed limits the way that they should be, increments however the chief suggests. And then the other thing is.
any ownership of that,
So
What
this
does
is not
that,
a
what does
committee
that mean,
report, though.
study? I don't know what that means.
Well,
Study.
we have some entrances that you come in at, like off a town line, you come in from 40 and you go, now you'll be going 40 to 35 to 25. If you're coming in,
Oh, so, but, I mean, I could make you that list. If you gave me like 5 minutes, I could probably figure it out. What does study mean?
well, I just feel like we as a council need to be consistent.
Okay.
on what we're deciding for these entrances. And I also now totally feel like we need to decide what speed limit we want around our parks.
So are you suggesting that this be an agenda item for a future
Yes.
meeting? Okay.
For the Public Safety Committee?
No, for the full council, because not all of us can go to the Public Safety Committee, I'm
Well,
sorry.
But shouldn't it first be examined by the Public Safety Committee? I mean, it's like,
I think though at first procedurally needs to come here for that direction to the public safety. It's not an agenda item right now, so that can't be done.
So we should appoint a public safety.
So that, I don't disagree necessarily with what you're saying, but procedurally, there needs to be some direction from somebody to public safety. It's not an agenda item for this body at this time, so if you want it to be possibly an agenda, a direction that should be on the agenda.
So do I want to make this on the council agenda then, or do I want to just go straight to public safety? Because I don't really care, I just think that we need to,
Can we put it to public safety so we can do
Yeah.
some of the legwork?
yeah, absolutely.
I guess you can talk with the city administrator about procedurally how that can happen.
Yeah,
So you'll consult with Al.
yeah, that sounds good.
She was looking forward to that.
Except for, are we having regular public safety meetings?
It's actually scheduled for February.
Okay. Oh, okay, good.
Yes.
Okay.
We worked.
Right, of course.
I can just not be there now. There's only 5 people in here.
No,
So we have to show up.
No.
Any
not-
other committee reports?
You need to do that.
No, we got fire tomorrow, public safety was today, right now, a little bit ago.
It's forever. It's ongoing.
Public Works, we looked at sidewalks, and we're gonna investigate putting a sidewalk up on Brown Drive, and possibly Blanche. We're just gonna investigate possibly a Blanche to tie in with that. Had the engineer's report, which was riveting as always. A well-told tale. A lot of good stuff going on.
There is.
Yep. Historic preservation from a couple weeks ago. We just reviewed our year from last year. We also looked at our scavenger hunt and the 50 Years Together event, kind of reviewed that, and heard a lot of interest in doing the scavenger hunt again at some point. So we're putting together a plan to maybe do that sometime in May. Possibly tying in with the company, or not the company, the city
Picnic?
picnic. Yeah.
Okay.
Also talked about our work plan for the year and what we're going to do for that. And then finally heard from the Milton House. I think they had an increase of attendance over 30%, if I remember hearing right. Inga? And their attendance last year increased by over 30% for Milton House, which is huge for any historic site. So I thought that was worth sharing. I think it was upwards of 33% or more.
Do you have any idea about the dates for Civil War Living History Days?
The 19th, 20th, 21st of May.
May.
I believe it's as long as the 19th is a Friday.
18th is the Friday.
18th, 19th, and 20th of May will be the dates.
School day and
Yep. And we're thinking of some new ideas for this year as well. And working on a grant for it. Well, since the South never shows up.
Way to go, Al.
You send a text to them.
These days, some people just don't know which side's the south.
Yeah.
Grant.
Union Reenactors get asked if they're Confederates.
Are there any other committee reports? And did your new historic preservation members start?
Yes, you did.
CDA was scheduled to be yesterday, but we had rescheduled it to next week, Monday.
Staff reports, Howie?
Not much out of the ordinary, just, we did the snow, plowed it, sidewalks. We did have to shovel sidewalks last week for some people. So there's been some code enforcement going on for different various things, so we'll probably in the next couple of council meetings, bring up a couple of code issues for you to decide on enforcement, so. Oh, and the sledding hill and the skating rink, I mentioned in the Gazette that the kids are using it, so.
Oh, good, good. I was thinking about the skating rink the other day when I was freezing outside. Dan, anything?
Just working on year-end stuff. Everyone should have gotten their W-2s last week, so
Yes.
the next 5-6 weeks will be really busy because I bumped our audit up early, so.
Could I just ask Dan a quick question? Could you give us an update on the library payback fund from our city, 750?
At the next meeting, you want that on the agenda?
No, I was hoping he could just do it in his report.
They're still short about 200,000.
Pay up, Linda. Making your payments?
That includes pledges, so we need 200,000 more in pledges and/or cash. I just know we need another 200,000 at this point.
You understand what I'm saying, but you borrowed $750.
Yeah.
That's still.
Any other, okay, Chief?
We also worked on snow this week and did our first snowstorm education on the snow parking. Night one's always the hardest, so that was about 41 tickets and 1 car towed. So hopefully it'll, I'm not sure, but hopefully it'll improve for the next ones. We've also started a hiring process to build out our eligibility list. After we made our last hire, Jared Fish, we had 1 person on our eligibility list, and he has since taken a position with the city of Janesville. So to get our list back up to speed again, we're starting that process. And Inga has posted the link today, and we're going to be off and running and see if we can get a list put together.
We're in the process of doing a recruitment as well for the general labor position. Those applications are due January 28th. And what staff did do is put together a quarterly schedule for the Public Safety Committee, the Public Works Committee, and the Personnel and Finance Committee. So there's going to be, it's all kind of coinciding with what Dan has going on, or Scott might have going on, or Howie might have going on, to direct to those committees. So Public Safety is going to be next, Personnel and Finance in March, and then kind of keep that schedule going.
Al?
I gave my update at the beginning of this meeting for the first 35 minutes of it, but as I mentioned real briefly in that presentation, if the first 16 days of 2018 are indication of what 2018 is going to be like, I just believe it's going to be another busy year, and that's good.
Okay. Team building. If there is think of an area that if time and money is not a concern, what subject area or anything else would you like to learn more about? Is there a hobby, a field, anything? What are you guys all interested in? Okay, Dave, if time and money are not a concern, is there an area of interest or hobby or something you would like to study or take a class on, or arts or crafts? Or I'm helping Howie generate ideas for his retirement. No. I'm just kidding. We've already signed a 20-year contract with Howie, so.
Starting in 10 years, right?
Yeah, starting in 10 years. So, anybody can go first.
I'll start. If time and money was irrelevant, I'd probably.
Nice.
Space travel.
Want to be an astronaut?
Yep.
Cool.
being able to provide technology to help people become mobile again. People who are paralyzed, people like myself who use wheelchairs, and making that affordable to everybody. The technology's out there, but the affordability's not. So.
Dave? Oh, nice. Cool. Home design.
Interior and exterior.
You're gonna have
Interior.
some, he is gonna have some free time.
Will you get on that and report back monthly?
I guess I would say woodworking. It's just something that I have always had an interest in. It's not, doesn't look like it's real easy, but it looks like you could be really creative with it.
Ryan?
Programming.
Like computer
coding.
program?
Yeah, your programming, coding, things like that.
The library's offering some classes.
I have some classes in college and high school I took, but
Writing.
I think I'd like to do a mountain climbing. Well, I'd like to be like a permanent part-time student the rest of my life. That's just all I do. Somebody pays me to do it, talk about it. But other than that, mountain climbing. Dan?
Actuarial studies.
Okay. Deadbeat too.
I don't approve any more numbers trading for that guy. Anybody else? Like you all went. You all went. Dan went. Inga.
There's about something new every day. GIS certificate I'd like to have, a marketing degree, a graphic design degree, just whenever anything kind of pops up in my day-to-day life, I'd like a little bit more academic knowledge in it.
Chief, anything?
Yeah, Larry and I need to talk because I'm kind of thinking psychology.
See, and I thought you were going to say firefighter.
I tried that for a while. And
You were bored.
I was not as good at that as I am at this, and I'm marginal at this as it is. So.
Mark?
Kind of like you got changed by the architecture.
Howie?
Time and money are no object.
Right.
I'd give you
Thank you, I'll support you.
Like the one walking.
Oh, no.
Howie declared. Put that in the Gazette.
What is there, like 30 people running now?
Mark, it's all you.
The first thing that popped in my head was Spanish fluency. Spanish what? Fluency.
Oh, Spanish fluency. Okay, cool. Mark, anything you haven't shared that we don't know about you? And that's why we have to keep going to do team building, because we're trying to really figure out about Mark.
10 years later, we'll find some picture of Mark.
FBI profile.
Well, I would say if time and money was no object, then I would want to pursue in-depth studies in philosophy to come up with a good a work on a philosophical foundation for the advancement of a multicultural society. I think that's yeah, pretty exciting guys over here.
and Lieutenant Governor said that. You guys are awesome.
How are you, philosophical advisor?
You're
one of the Griffin brothers.
Mark's probably taking notes to write a book about all of us too. And Teresa's gonna be his editor. There's lots of live footage for you to review. Okay. Yeah. Our next meeting is February 6, 2018 at 7 p.m. And Linda, number 14.
Consideration of a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute, section 1985, parent 1, parent C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Read the city administrator's annual review.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Right there.
All those opposed? Unanimously will go into closed session.